report on. Okay, so moving on to number 11. This is the student housing and the student housing.
And Brett Schenbeck is here to provide a verbal update.
Okay.
Thanks. Good morning. So I'm here to provide just a real quick update on verbal update related to the Standing Policy Committee motion from February 3rd. This was with respect to student housing in and around the University of Manitoba. As you're likely aware, the neighborhoods surrounding the University of Manitoba, like Fort Richmond and Agassiz, for example, are predominantly single-family neighborhoods. They're largely zoned R1, so intended to accommodate primarily single-family housing. Given the proximity of these neighborhoods to the university, there's been some single-family dwellings that have been converted to accommodate student housing. The R1 zoning district, however, does not allow for conversion to dormitory housing or single-room occupancy, or SROs. So in some cases, these have actually been done without permits, and they don't always comply with the building code. So what we've done in response to this motion is a scan of bylaws from other Canadian jurisdictions. So we've looked at Halifax, Saskatoon, Vancouver, Edmonton, and Kingston, with a focus on how student multiple tenancy housing is regulated in those respective jurisdictions. So I should emphasize the motion was focused on student housing and issues related to zoning and how other municipalities regulate this matter through their zoning bylaw. So first we looked at where SROs are permitted. So within what zoning categories, for example, single family, multiple family, commercial. And we found that all municipalities permit SROs within their multifamily zoning districts, as we do here in Winnipeg as well. We also found that many municipalities permit SROs as discretionary uses in single-family districts. Winnipeg does not, as I mentioned previously. We also explored some operational standards within other municipalities. Some cities have op standards specific to SROs. For example, minimum room sizes, or they may prohibit cooking in rooms where people sleep. And then finally, we looked at occupancy, and there's a pretty wide range from one jurisdiction to another. Edmonton, for example, has a maximum of 6 tenants in a single-family district. Saskatoon permits 15 boarders in a boarding house. In Winnipeg, we have a maximum of 12 beds in an SRO. Also, we did look at the Manitoba Building Code, and there's some issues that are worth noting. The Manitoba Building Code doesn't have requirements specific to multiple family tenancy. So for this reason, any property intended for use as an SRO meets the code requirements that were established for hotel and apartment uses. So those requirements can be cost prohibitive to convert single family dwellings, and can pose a challenge to establishing SROs here in Winnipeg. So that's just a real quick update of what we've found so far. Happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Anyone else? Questions? Yep, go ahead.
So what are you recommending with regards to this?
So at this point, we've done an initial scan. I think it probably would make sense at this time to dive in a little bit more detail. So far, we've looked exclusively at the zoning bylaws from each of these municipalities and how they regulate SROs. It would probably make sense to look at each city in more detail, the specific context, look at the university and any sort of neighborhoods that might actually exist around it, talk to stakeholders from each municipality. So I think the next step would be to explore it in more detail.
So how does this differ at all from our existing policy with regards to granny flats?
Might be good to call Martin.
Yeah.
This is like a rooming house as well.
Hey, Councillor. The difference is what you're referring to as granny flats in the zoning bylaw are secondary suites, and secondary suites are considered to be accessory to a primary single-family residence, not an exclusive use. So you could have a secondary suite within a home, and we have restrictions on how big it can be in order to keep it small, so that it is in fact accessory to the main single-family residence. Same with detached secondary suites. We've done a few of those above garages in backyards, and we also have controls on size and location, that sort of thing, as opposed to occupying an occupancy of single rooms within a residence, which is, what we would commonly refer to as a rooming house. Yeah.
I just thought I'd mention that the issue of rooming houses is kind of exists across the city, and it's different in different parts of the city, what the issues are and what the concerns are. And there is a rooming house task force that's currently in place that the province and as the chair of housing, I'm co-chairing it with the provincial MLA. And we're looking at some of these issues, and I just wanted to just so that everyone's aware, we're aware of this motion as well. It's not necessarily what drove the creation of the task force, because the task force was more about concern for the loss of safe, affordable rooming houses and appropriate housing for people and preventing homelessness, and trying to find ways to work with the good landlords and the legal rooming houses. So that's sort of going on at the same time, and everyone's sort of aware of each other. But I just thought I'd let this committee know so that you're aware that work's going on, so you're not surprised by it. But there's nothing that's come out of it at this point yet in terms of any recommendations. Just thought I'd let you know.
Any layover for how many days?
I think 90 days would be sufficient.
For the report, for the verbal report back.
For another verbal report? Or for an actual report?
What's your
I guess
deliverable?
until we get to the point, do we want to actually start doing that? They just want to gather more
They want to
information.
do some more work on it.
All right.
I think that's fair.
So 60 days, did you say?
90.
90 for no verbal. That's correct. And no pictures. Okay, so lay it over for 90 days for a verbal report on the additional information that we're going to gather. Thank you. All support, motion carried.
No, you have
We
to write them all.
love your handwriting. We want it all handwritten from you.